Hello and welcome to episode 393 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan, as always joined by Evan Silva. Officially start of fantasy football season as we record this here on July 6th. Evan, how's it going?
How's it going? We talked about the Baker Mayfield trade that just happened on our previous podcast, our Hot Takes podcast. Mm-hmm. One aspect we didn't mention, one fallout aspect that we didn't mention is that the Seahawks are now going to roll with Geno Smith and Drew Lock. Like, that cements that.
Or Jimmy G.
Would the 49ers trade him within the division?
I don't know.
Teams hate doing that.
I know.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe he'll get cut and the Seahawks should sign him. But right now, I mean, it's looking bleak. I had to move DK Metcalf way down the rankings. I don't want him or Tyler Lockett. It pains me. I mean, I love the talent of DK Metcalf. Drafting Tyler Lockett and playing him in DFS has been so profitable over the last few years when you get him on those big games. But this is not. I mean, these guys are going to finish with like 700 yards apiece. It could be really ugly.
I mean, I'm on the clock. It's like the 100th pick overall. And I'm sitting there and Tyler Lockett is like still there. And I'm like, am I really passing on Tyler Lockett at 100th overall? I don't think that I am, but I hear you with that. It's so scary. I mean, that's so late for a guy like Tyler Lockett. But yeah. All right. On today's show, we're going to engage with our audience. We value you guys so much. We want to know what you're thinking, what questions you have. Do not hesitate to send any feedback at any time, any questions you have. We're always happy to go over anything, and we thought we'd give a public opportunity to do so by doing a mailbag episode. We'll answer, 8, 9, 10, maybe 12, 13 questions here that we got from you guys here today. Before we get into it, want to remind everyone this show is brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy, undoubtedly the smoothest, the highest stakes, the best user experience for anyone trying to play best ball. We have so many deals going on with Underdog. The first one, use promo code ETR when you sign up, and you get a $100 matching deposit bonus. You can upload our rankings directly from our draft kit onto Underdog. And also, now, if you get Draft Kit Pro, we have this promo where you get $10. Even if you already have an Underdog account, you still get $10. Just be sure, we emailed out the link today to everybody who subscribed to Draft Kit Pro. And if you do so, you will get $10 in your Underdog account just by putting in your name there. All right. Let's get into it here, Evan. We will go start with question 1 from G. Bellici. He says, the market seems too low on Deontay Johnson. Earning targets is a skill, and he's elite at earning targets. The quarterback room is uninspiring, but he's produced consistently, all with terrible quarterback play and poor offensive environment in the past. So we talked about this a little bit on the last episode, the Hot Take episode, but the ADP on Deontay Johnson is around 40th overall. Certainly very steep. I'm surprised G. Bellici thinks that market is too low on him. I could see you making a case for being in line with market on Deontay, but it's hard for me to see room for a ceiling on that ADP. But go ahead, Evan. You're being asked to defend your Deontay Johnson ranking.
Yeah, I guess he's referring to my rankings as the market. But Deontay Johnson, I think that so much of his production was a product of the way that Ben Roethlisberger played. Ben Roethlisberger, you have to understand, he ran the offense for the last 2 years. It wouldn't even be fair to say that they had an offensive coordinator, or it would be fair to say that their offensive coordinator was Ben Roethlisberger. They gave him the keys to the car. That's not going to be the case anymore under Matt Canada. Do you think that they're going to play the same way with Mitchell Trubisky, who's not really like a touch passer, who's trying to get the ball out before? I mean, Ben Roethlisberger could not move. Mm-hmm. He couldn't move. He didn't want to get hit. He was playing behind a terrible offensive line, and he had to get rid of the ball quickly. And Deontay Johnson, with like his freaking 5-yard ADOT, just would, run a few yards downfield, turn around and catch the ball, or not catch it. Well, a lot of times he didn't catch it. And also, we have this report, like the Steelers aren't going to pay Deontay Johnson after this year. I mean, he's going to command, especially if his production does remain strong, he's going to command a pretty big contract on the 2023 free agent market. They've got Chase Claypool through 2023. That's a player they could potentially build around, is more talented than Deontay Johnson. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of aspects that are working against Deontay Johnson. Right now, I still have Deontay Johnson as wide receiver 20. but he's been better than that the past 2 years. But I just think that so much of that was a product of Ben Roethlisberger dictating the way the passing game went, and that's not going to be the case anymore.
Yeah, we have him around 44th overall, but I pass on him. I mean, I don't have any Diontae Johnson there in the early 40s. His ADP was at 38 not too long ago. Now it's up around 41. The positive thing that I'll say for Diontae Johnson is dude gets open, and I think he will continue to get open. I know, Evan made the point. His ADOT is so low. All his routes are close to the line of scrimmage. It's easier to get open there. I do think he'll get open, and guys who get open earn targets. I just don't think that I think we're buying Diontae Johnson at his ceiling here if we're buying him in like the high 30s/40s. And there's plenty of other guys that I would rather have. Certainly Gabe Davis, Pittman, Terry McLaurin, Cortland Sutton, even like Juju, I think I would rather have than Diontae Johnson. I know that's a bit of a hot take as their ADPs are really wide. But yeah, I'm not that high on Diontae Johnson. I'm also probably not as high as Evan on Chase Claypool. But, it would not shock me if one of these guys ended up having a good year. I'm curious to see what the offense is going to look like. Because like Evan said, it's going to be way, 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 way different. I just don't have a great feel for it.
I'm curious. I'm very curious to see how it's going to look. And what are the wide receiver roles going to be?
Yeah.
Right now, it looks like George Pickens is probably going to be the number 3. But, I mean, he's a second-round rookie who fell in the draft and has played 12 games over the past 2 seasons. He had an ACL tear. He had a suspension in college. And then Calvin Austin, who they drafted in the 4th round, who's 5'8". I mean, those are their top 4 receivers on paper right now. They're kind of thin at wide receiver right now. And, who's going to play in the slot? Who's going to play outside? We don't really know. Maybe we'll pick up some tells during the preseason. But, I mean, how this offense looks is going to be kind of a mystery.
All right. Question 2 is from Vin Monty. He says, who is someone you're most concerned that you're wrong about? I actually have 2 here, so I'll go first and we can sandwich it. The first one for best ball that I'm concerned I'm wrong about is Daniel Jones because, I'm pretty confident in Daniel Jones and I build a lot of my best ball teams knowing that I'm going to target these late Daniel Jones stacks. And so I skip over a lot of quarterbacks that I like because I'm like, oh, well, I'm just going to get Daniel Jones in round 12 or round 13 or whatever. It's going to be fine. If I'm wrong on that, my best ball portfolio is going to look pretty ugly because I have a ton of Tony. I have some Galladay. I have a bunch of late Daniel Jones, Wandale stacks. I have Saquon plenty as well. And so what if I don't consider my best skill or really anywhere close to my best skill evaluating talent. And what if Daniel Jones just flat sucks and I don't see it and Brian Daboll can't save him? You know what I mean? What if Daniel Jones just like absolute dust like Sam Darnold was? That's I think at least possible. And that would be really bad for my best ball team. So that's one that I'm concerned about just because it would affect a lot of the structure of a lot of my best ball rosters. I think for redraft, it's not as important unless you're in a 2 QB league because I don't think anyone's taking Daniel Jones in 1 QB leagues anyways.
Building your entire 2022 draft approach around Daniel Jones.
What could go wrong?
I'd be a little worried too. But no, but I'm ahead of ADP on Daniel Jones as well. For me, it is Devontae Adams, as we discussed on the previous Hot Take show. But I wanted to give a different answer here because I'm also concerned about the Leonard Fournette, Rashad White disparity increasingly. You tweeted out an article about potential cuts today. Giovanni Bernard, if he gets cut, like all of a sudden Rashad White is number 2 behind Leonard Fournette. We talked about this on the Man versus Machine show. And one of the reasons that I was lower than Leone on Rashad White is because Giovanni Bernard is between Leonard Fournette and Rashad White. And really, Rashad White and Giovanni Bernard's skill sets sort of are similar. And so, but if all of a sudden Giovanni Bernard is out of the way and Leonard Fournette is as fat as he has looked in these pictures, I mean, did you see him on the treadmill the other time? He looks like he's 270.
Oh, he was on the treadmill with like DeAndre Swift and a bunch of like really in shape guys, right? Yeah,
that's fair. That's fair. But I mean, that's how I look. That's how I look on the treadmill, Adam. No, not really. But I'm starting to get a little worried about his fitness and the dude's from New Orleans. I mean, they got some fucking awesome food down there. I went there for the Final Four in April. And I mean, the food is it's so much better than it is where I live. It's unbelievable. Yeah. It's like the further you go south, the better the food gets, like on a mile by mile basis. We went through Memphis, Jackson, Mississippi, got down to New Orleans. I mean, the food is so freaking. I don't blame him. He just got paid.
Yeah.
You know, and he's trying to get back into shape. Will he be able to do that? Is that going to piss some people off? Could it open the door a little bit for Rashad White? Rashad White has some talent. I'm going to move Rashad White up a little bit. I've been thinking about moving Leonard Fournette down, or am I overreacting? Because right now I have him RB11. That's really high.
So, my thing is trust. I mean, who does Tom Brady trust? Are we sure he even trusts Rashad White? We know for a fact he loves and trusts Leonard Fournette. And I think Leonard Fournette in camp, like, camp is long, man. NFL camp is like 4 or 5 weeks. He'll get in shape. I'm not too worried about that, man. Like, I'm really not.
I haven't moved him down or anything, but I have thought about moving up Rashad White.
Yeah.
I have him at 132. I mean, I thought I was doing him a favor, putting him in the 150 really at all.
Yeah.
But 132, I wouldn't mind moving him up. I think Leone has him like right around 100.
Yeah. Yeah, I can check really. We actually have him 121 overall.
Okay. Oh, well, it's not even a big disparity. What was Leone talking about? Get out of here. Get out of here with the spreadsheets, all right?
I'll give one more guy I'm concerned about being wrong about, and maybe Evan can chime in too, because I know you're high on him, Miles Sanders. So I make a lot of these hero RB teams. In other words, I take one running back in the first or second round, then skip over running back. Maybe not even consciously, but I just like other players better until I get to, around 7, 8, or 9. And in a lot of these hero RB builds, I end up with Miles Sanders as my RB2. And that could look really bad if it goes like last year, where Boston Scott and Kenny Gainwell and Jordan Howard, if he resigns, steals so much work like they did last year. I still feel good about Miles Sanders in round 7, so I'm not like overly concerned about it. Mm-hmm. But again, that would be like a structural problem for my teams, for my hero RB teams, where the RB2 is Miles Sanders. So that's what I'm a little bit concerned about. All right. Question 3 from Varde. He says, I would like to hear Evan's film guy take on the Ravens wide receiver 2 spot. The guys currently on the roster, like Duvernay, Wallace, Proshi, are a little unknown. So curious to see who Evan likes to emerge, if anyone. I actually got this question also from different people. I think people are trying to stack Lamar late, and they don't know who to stack with beyond Bateman and Mark Andrews. Do you have a favorite beyond those 2 guys to stack with Lamar?
Well, my favorite would be Tylan Wallace, because these other guys have been around. I mean, Devin Duvernay has kind of been around. He's gotten some opportunities. He's a guy who ran really fast coming out of college, and he's like a slot receiver, but he hasn't popped at all. But he's been given opportunities. James Prochet has been given some opportunities. He was drafted in 2020. But Tylan Wallace, last year, he primarily played special teams. He had a 4th-round pick in the 2021 draft, 5'11", 195 out of Oklahoma State, ran 4.48, sub 7.3 cone. He's quick. He was extremely productive as a sophomore at Oklahoma State. One of the better indicators for college prospects is breakout age. Mm-hmm. And he busted out big time as a sophomore at Oklahoma State. He had over 80 catches, over 1,400 yards, double-digit TDs. So that would be the one guy that I think would be the most interesting as like legit 20th round pick. And that there's a reason that nobody's going earlier than that among these wide receiver 2 candidates. And that's because I think the expectation is the odds on favorite, thing to happen in Baltimore. They're going to go back to running the ball with heavy volume. They sort of played around with being more of a pass heavy offense last year. It really didn't go that well. And now their offense is going to be built, especially their passing offense, is going to be built around Rashad Bateman and their tight ends. Mark Andrews is arguably the best receiving tight end in the league. Nick Boyle is back. They drafted Charlie Kolar in the 4th round. And they also drafted Isaiah Likely in the 4th round. And last year they traded for Josh Oliver from the Jags. So they had a ton of options at tight end. Just the fact that they doubled down on tight ends in the 4th round there. And the Ravens love to draft in the 4th round. They really maximize those. Every year they have like 4 4th-round picks. They use 2 of them on tight ends this year. That really is telling to me that they're going to go all in on a very tight end heavy offense. And this second receiver position is probably going to end up being like a blocker and, maybe like a situational deep threat. I think Tylan Wallace is probably the best option to fill that role, though, opposite Rashad Bateman.
I mean, they were 13th in pass rate over expectation last year, which is incredibly high for them. They missed the playoffs. I think they go back to just like trying to run the ball so much, and it's so hard to see the number 3 option, really having good fantasy games. But I get that when you have Lamar in some of these stacks and you want to stack him with some last round pick who's unique also, I think it's interesting. And Tylan Wallace is certainly an interesting one. Let's go to question 4 from Glenn Anderson. He says, my home league rewards long distance touchdowns, 50 plus yards. How much do you consider splash play expectations when doing season-long player evaluations? So I would only consider this an absolute tiebreaker. Like I would draft, even if my league gave a bunch of points for long distance touchdowns, 50 plus yard or more touchdowns, I would draft as if it's normal, full PPR. But if it's really close, if you come down to a decision on a guy that's really close, I would go with the higher average depth of target guy, the higher ADOT guy. But I mean, man, like I think Jamar Chase led the entire NFL in this stat last year. And that was with 5 of them. Most guys, 1 or 2 is a massive year to have a 50 plus yard touchdown. And so it just doesn't happen nearly as much as people think. And so I really wouldn't worry about it too much at all. Evan, I don't know if you've played any of these leagues before with long distance touchdowns, or would you change your strategy at all?
No, I've never played, long distance touchdown league. No, I would do the exact same for you. I mean, only like in the 9th round, like if am I going between like, MVS, who we know has like long splash play potential playing with Patrick Mahomes in particular, or, versus some, possession receiver who might, catch 10 more balls than MVS. I mean, I would draft regular.
Yeah, like Jacoby Myers and Mecole Hardman, we have next to each other in the rankings. Like, yeah, that would be, to me, no-brainer for Mecole.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Okay, question 5 from Patrick. He says, what kind of lawnmower does Evan use when he mows his own grass? This lawnmower bit is going viral, Evan. They want to know, what kind of lawnmower do you use?
I mean,
is it gas or is it battery? Because I had a gas, and then I recently switched to a battery one.
I mean, if I'm being completely honest here, like I don't even actually mow my own lawn.
Oh no!
I hated that you picked this question because I had to come clean on this one.
Wait until Leone hears this.
I pay my little daughter's friend from across the alley to mow the lawn.
Oh my God! Wait until Leone hears this. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's all a sham. Okay. Okay. We got a question 6 from Nibson, which I think we can mostly skip over because we already addressed it. He said, am I wrong in thinking that Super Bowl Lenny is one of the best values in the draft at the 1-2 turn? The only concern that I have on Lenny is he's 27. As Evan said, he just got paid. He's looking a little fat. I think Rashad White can definitely play. If Gio Bernard makes the team, he's healthy now. And so like the role that Leonard had, which was so outrageous. In other words, 4, 5, 6 targets per game, plus all the goal line work was so outrageous. Does he still have that role? If he does, I think, yeah, for sure. He's a steal early round 2, mid round 2. But guys fall off a cliff quickly in the NFL, man. He's 27 years old now, and we'll see if the role was enough for him. All right. Question 8 from Mitch Painter. He said, will it be a mistake to end up with 0 shares of Derrick Henry on underdog? It's an interesting question. I know a lot of people are doing a lot of different underdog drafts. My take is that in round 1, I don't want to stray too far from ADP because, like, yeah, I'm lower than market on big dog. So is Evan. But, like, it's not that crazy for him to go for 1,600 yards and 15 touchdowns. Like, it's not a huge shock. I would rather take stronger stands further down the board. Like, I have 0 Ezekiel Elliott so far. I have 0 Deebo Samuel so far. Like, to me, it's easier to make stands there. But yeah, what do you think about coming out? Let's say you did 50 underdog drafts, Evan. How would you feel if you had 0 big dog? It would certainly be scary.
Well, we were below market on Derrick Henry last year. I think I'm going to have him atop my fades again this year because I'm even less confident in the complexion of the Titans as a team. And a lot of what fuels Derrick Henry is that the Titans have been a very overachieving team and they played in positive game script. And I think that they were like I think they were the worst number 1 seed like in the history of the NFL last year by Football Outsiders metrics or something like that. I mean, and I think that they're even less talented this year. So that hurts. He's coming off a significant injury. He's got just an unbelievable amount of touches under his belt last year. That was part of the reason why we faded him last year. Yeah. Number 1, I mean, he was killing us there for 6 weeks. I mean, it was painful, but we wound up being right about him. And part of our pre-evaluation on him was the fact that he could be at a high risk of injury because he has so much wear and tear. I mean, remember at Alabama, he had so many touches. Yeah. You add that up to what he's gotten in the NFL. The more touches that you get, I mean, he's a big strike zone. Like dude is going to take a lot of hits over the course. I mean, he's going to deliver probably more hits, but he's also going to take a lot. And so I don't know. I keep moving him down, man. I mean, I've got him at 11 overall right now. We talked about on the Hot Take show that I'm even thinking about moving DeAndre Swift ahead of him, bumping Derrick Henry. I might bump him out of I have him at the back end of the first tier, the last player in the first running back tier. I think I'm going to move him down into the second tier and move DeAndre Swift ahead of him.
The reason that I lose on Derrick Henry when I lose on him is because rationally everything you're saying is perfectly true and makes perfect sense. Derrick Henry has consistently been the outlier, consistently broken the mold and been the freak. But based on any data that we have, historical stuff, it's just you can't get there on Derrick Henry going in the top 5 or 6 or 7 unless you are willing to say this guy is a total freak outlier, which, by the way, I've been willing to say lately. I've played Derrick Henry way more in DFS than I had ever before over the last couple of years. And it's been mostly good. Just forget everything else. Dude is a total freak outlier. That's the best argument for Derrick Henry. But everything Evan said is 100% true. You can't really get there on paper with Derrick Henry in the top 5 or 6. Let's go to question 9 from Kevin. He says, does Silva know that the Bears' number 2 wide receiver is basically Levitan and they have an arena league offensive line? Why does Silva have Justin Fields so high? So I appreciate the insult, Kevin. Also, we have Justin Fields QB 14 or so in the top 300s. Evan, you have Justin Fields a little bit higher, QB 11. But yeah, explain to Kevin why you still are a little bit above market, looks like, on Justin Fields.
Yeah, I mean, and I've thought about moving him down. We talked about him on Man versus Machine. Mm-hmm. The supporting cast is really, really bad. I mean, what you should focus, what was this guy's name?
Kevin. You need to focus more on the offensive line right now than the number 2 receiver situation. He did mention, to his credit, he called it an arena league offensive line, but go ahead.
All right. You got it. Yeah, I mean, they're thinking about starting a 5th round pick out of Southern Utah at left tackle, and they just lost Dakota Dozier, who they were planning to start at right guard for the season-ending injured reserve. So, and it was bad before that. So, yeah, the supporting cast is bad. That also can translate to, more hurried approach. He's a dual threat quarterback with the ability to throw the ball downfield. And so he's got a lot of big play potential. And to me, that is a tantalizing combination when you can run and you can throw the ball deep downfield, and Darnell Mooney can go get it. But I mean, I hear you. I'm probably going to move him down.
My thing is I'd rather be higher than lower on rushing quarterbacks because if something clicks, he could absolutely go nuke. Whereas if some efficiency quarterback, let's say, I don't know, Kirk Cousins, he doesn't have the same ceiling that Justin Fields has, because if Justin Fields actually puts it together, he's going to go completely nuclear. But is that likely? I don't think so. And I think I'm a little bit worried about Justin Fields not being the same caliber of rusher as what's commonly thought about him. But yeah, again, I'd rather be higher than lower on rushing quarterbacks.
Yeah, I've got him 123rd overall. That's what the equivalent of 10th, 11th, 12th round, somewhere in there. So I don't know. I'll probably move him down behind, I have him ahead of Burrow and Stafford and Rodgers right now. And I'll probably just move him below those guys and have him right around our quarterback 14, 15.
Yep, that'd be in line with market there on Justin Fields. Okay, question 10 from Joel. He says, is stacking in redraft leagues a viable strategy? And if yes, which stacks are reasonable price tags? And should I target bringbacks in the same division? So stacking in redraft, yes. One of the first articles Leone did for us was about this topic. I believe it was called is stacking in redraft viable or something like that. You can find it with the Google machine about 1.5 years ago. The data was very clear. Stacking in redraft is indeed good. I would not worry at all about bringbacks, and I also would not overstack. In other words, you don't need, like in best ball, sometimes I'll have like a 3, 4, or even a 5-person stack from the same team with the quarterback. I think in redraft, you want to limit it to just a quarterback, wide receiver, or maybe a quarterback and 2 of his options, no more than that. I wouldn't worry about bringbacks. A lot of the bringback stuff is for larger field tournaments. In other words, we're trying to limit the number of things we get right to beat 1,000-person field or a 10,000-person field or 100,000-person field. In these home leagues, it's like 12 people. I really would not worry about bringbacks at all. He asked about which stacks are reasonable price tags. We talked about the Chiefs one already. I mean, Chiefs stack is one that you can certainly get. And obviously, everybody knows that I'm on the Giants stack stuff this year. Any other stacks you want to point out here, Evan, for this year that you like?
I like the Vikings. Assuming that you start with either Justin Jefferson or Dalvin Cook in the first round, Kirk Cousins is very cheap. KJ Osborne is very cheap. Irv Smith is very cheap. Adam Thielen is, I think Leone and I agree that he's super undervalued this year. Yeah, there's a lot of potential there for to put together a nice Viking stack.
All right. Speaking of teams, we got a question from Biden Rescue Dog. He says, how do you feel about the Dallas offense this season? Specifically interested when you think about Dak, Schultz, and Pollard. We're going to skip Pollard because Evan already talked about that extensively on the Hot Take pod. But yeah, we haven't really talked a lot about Dak and Schultz. We talked about Lamb. We talked about Pollard. We haven't talked a lot about Dak and Schultz. And to me, like, Schultz's volume is going to be there, I think. And also, Dak is relatively cheap. Now, we know no Amari Cooper hurts, no Michael Gallup hurts. But what do you think about Dak and Schultz? Anything else on the Cowboys?
I love it. I love Dalton Schultz. I mean, if I could put him higher, like I think about putting him higher like every day. I have him a tight end 6 at the top of my 3rd tight end tier, ahead of Hawkinson. And then the 2nd tier is like Darren Waller, George Kittle. I mean, I think about putting him higher than George Kittle. I mean, I think that that's not crazy because I think he could out-target George Kittle by like freaking 30 targets. I mean, that's not crazy to think. George Kittle, the 49ers, we know he's a stud, all right? He's an unbelievable real-life player. He really hasn't been that great in fantasy. Yeah. Dalton Schultz is not nearly the actual NFL player that George Kittle is, but he's in a much more fantasy-friendly environment, especially with the transition coming to Trey Lance, because I think the 49ers are just going to run the piss out of the ball.
Right.
And George Kittle is going to be a big part of that, you know? So I love it. I'm all the way on board.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, Dak is pretty freaking cheap too. Dak is going around 85th overall as the QB 10 on Underdog. We actually have him as the QB 8 on our Underdog rankings. Mike Zinman makes a good point here. He says, why have no sports books posted Ty Davis Price offensive rookie of the year prices? Is this some kind of conspiracy because they know he's going to smash? I actually didn't believe Mike because I really didn't, because how could you not have him? I mean, some of these books have Tyler Linderbaum. They have Khalil Shakir. They have Calvin Austin listed for offensive rookie of the year. They don't have Ty Davis Price listed for offensive rookie of the year, which is really, really weird. Now, if I could get a 150-1 or even 100-1 on that, I think that would be worth a bet. Now, I think pretty sure Evan agrees, considering what we talked about with Ty Davis Price in fantasy. So yeah, I'll have my eyes on that for you, Mike Zinman. Maybe we can find one out there, or maybe someone listening knows a book that has Ty Davis Price offensive rookie of the year price out there. All right. Last question we're going to do here on the mailbag, and thank you again to everyone for the questions. This is a question I've gotten asked so much, Evan. I mean, constant. Who is this year's Cooper Kupp? This question is from Cowboy RJ. Who is this year's Cooper Kupp? The reason that this is a hard question to answer is because Cooper Kupp, the way he broke out is just like not common. I mean, Cooper Kupp broke out. I mean, he had already had a 90-plus catch season on his resume. But for a 28-year-old slot receiver to just go completely nuclear is just, I mean, unprecedented. And I think you have to give a lot of credit to Matthew Stafford, who, you know, obviously created career years for Calvin Johnson, for Kenny Golladay, and now for Cooper Kupp. So it's hard, in my opinion, to come up with a guy. I think the answer, and the one that Cowboy RJ mentioned, the one that's, to me, makes the most sense is Juju Smith-Schuster, who's getting a similarly massive quarterback upgrade that Cooper Kupp got last year. Similarly plays the slot and is going to be in this really explosive Chiefs offense. You can go back to the hot takes pods for more of my take on Juju Smith-Schuster, but that's like the layup answer. Is there anybody else come to mind for you, Evan, on who is this year's Cooper Kupp?
God, yeah, I was just looking at some of these guys that they're offering for the offensive rookie of the year.
Yeah.
I've never heard a bunch of these guys.
That's what I'm saying, but they don't have TDP.
Unbelievable.
Insulting.
Jack Cohn was the quarterback at Notre Dame last year, undrafted, signed by the Colts. He's on there, and no third-round pick, Tyrion Davis. Jack Cohn stinks. I mean, he's terrible. All right. Anyways, the next Cooper Kupp.
Yes, this year's Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, we're all looking for that. Russell Gage, I think, is really interesting, landing in Tampa Bay with the Chris Godwin injury. I think Russell Gage took a big step in his career last year. Tom Brady openly lobbied for him. They gave him pretty good money, 3 years, $30 million, and he's pretty affordable. Kadarius Toney, we've talked ad nauseum about his chances. Christian Kirk is the guy who really stood out for me because from an age-adjusted standpoint, he's had a pretty good start to his career. He took big steps in efficiency. I just published the Jaguars team fantasy preview. You go in there, I think that you'll start to get a little excited about Christian Kirk if you read his blurb. And I think that Trevor Lawrence I like my 80-1 MVP bets on Trevor Lawrence. I think he could take a really big step. Just the utter incompetence that we saw last year from Urban Meyer transitioning to Doug Peterson, who's got a pretty good history tutoring quarterbacks. I think we could take a big step there. I like Christian Kirk. He can win inside and out, and he's got a clear path to number one receiver duties, playing with a quarterback with big-time sophomore elite potential. Marvin Jones is 32 years old now. His efficiency ratings were really down last year, and they got a whole lot of nothing behind those guys. So I actually think that Christian Kirk would be – I mean, he's not going to do what Cooper Kupp did. Like, let's be real. But I think that in terms of a guy that, like, could really pop, I think Christian Kirk could.
Okay. I'll throw one more out there. Maybe this isn't fair because this guy's going really high. He's going to go higher now. But DJ Moore is a chance. I mean, guy who has been, if you isolate wide receiver play, independent of quarterback play, DJ Moore has been one of the best wide receivers in the NFL for the last few years. And he's just been like unlucky with touchdowns. I mean, if he had some big touchdown years, people would think about him way, way, way differently. Now he gets the quarterback upgrade to Baker. So I could see DJ Moore making a Cooper Kupp type leap, not 2,000 yards and 19 touchdowns or whatever the hell Cooper Kupp had, but a very good leap for DJ Moore. And I still stand by the Juju one as well. All right. This was fun. Thank you to everyone for the questions. Hope you are enjoying the draft kit. As Evan mentioned, his team previews are going up there now. Our rankings are continuously updating for the news as it comes in and various things that we're discussing privately among the staff. Be sure to constantly check out our rankings and upload them onto Underdog if you're doing best ball drafts. We do have a bunch of home draft rankings and material up as well. Leone just wrote a really good article about the differences between home leagues and best ball type stuff and what we should be looking for as we start to get set for home draft season. 4, Evan. 4, Producer Luke. I'm Adam. Good luck, everybody.